Alright guys, we have a fun one for you today. The Olympia has just wrapped up. So we are going to be talking about, and if you hadn't seen my video before talking about the Open Olympia, we are today going to be talking about the Classic Physique Olympia. And let's just get it out of the way. Let's just get it out of the way right now. For the better half of last year, did not expect Ramon to win. I didn't. I just didn't. Did I think he could get top 3? Yes, of course. But did I think he was gonna win? I didn't. Now, we can get into why that is, but let's start with let's start a little bit lower at first. Let's work our way up. So we are going to only discuss the top 5 today. Actually, let's bring up some interesting notes, some honorable mentions, if you will, about the Classic Physique Olympia. So honorable mention number 1, Logan Franklin getting, I think it was 12th, but being out of the top 10. Very, very disappointing for a lot of people. Logan has a lot of fans. A lot of people thought that he was going to be a top 5 competitor. Some people even wanted him to win the whole thing. Am I surprised? Not really.
No.
Did I think that he would probably get around 10th? Yes. So being out of the top 10, it might be a little, I guess you could call it a tiny bit of a surprise. But honestly, I was watching all of these guys leading up to show, and I did not see it. I didn't see Logan being a serious contender for top 5, let alone top 3. I think the judges made the right decision. He was exposed in a few different poses, and overall, it's just, he brings great conditioning. I love his physique. It looks really, really good. But I think people like his physique more than him fitting the classic category. I've seen people say he is the epitome of classic physique. Honestly, for what the classic physique goes for, he is not. He is not. What the classic physique goes for is a perfect X frame with a lot of mass, and they really, really like hefty quad sweeps, hefty lat sweeps, and there are too many missing components, and he doesn't have enough mass in the back relative to some of these other competitors. There's too many things missing for him right now to be a top 5 physique, in my opinion, and clearly in the judges' opinion. So there's an honorable mention out of the way. Another honorable mention is Breon. Breon taking 14th, I believe. Breon, who has been a top 5 competitor for year upon year upon year. What happened? Honestly, the biggest factor, and people will not, maybe people have already said this, I'm not sure, but the biggest factor is Breon he's a little bit older, so his physique isn't necessarily quite the level it was before, but the category has just gotten better. People have gotten better. There's more competitive athletes. Breon, with his physique that he had this year, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, could have still taken a top 10 placing, maybe even a top 5 placing. But people just keep getting better. And so if you're not getting better alongside of them, which Breon would not be, in my opinion, you're not going to be able to keep up with these guys. He just made an announcement recently that he might move to 212. So that's going to be interesting. I'll definitely be watching out for that. But yeah. Honorable mention number 3, Matt Grego, I think got 10th. And you guys can fact check me on all of these, right? Obviously, I could be wrong on some of these placings. I'm just doing them off the top of my head. But I think Matt Grego got 10th. And I think that placing reflected where Matt Grego's physique is currently, which I know sounds crazy because a lot of people were saying he was a dark horse. He was going to come in and take a top 5 placing. There are just a couple things to his physique. He's a little bit narrower overall. I just don't think that he necessarily has it in him at this point to be a top 3 to 5 competitor. Unless his conditioning somehow blows everybody else out of the water, and a lot of people have really good conditioning now. Conditioning is just a given at this point. It gets every year. You just are seeing more overall competitors bring good level conditioning with shape, and I just don't think he's quite there for the top 3 to 5 conversation at this moment, or at least based on what he brought. So there's our honorable mentions. Now let us get to the top 5 competitors. One Punch Nas, Niall Darwin took home a 5th. And honestly, I couldn't be happier. The guy looked great. Overall shape, flow, everything just on point. But I did worry that he'd been gaining some momentum. I did worry that the judges might value things a little bit more highly than they should, like the narrowness of his waist. Because in my opinion, a classic physique does have a narrow waist, but that is not the thing that the entire decision should ride off of, in my opinion. You are perfectly free to disagree, but a lot of people take a look and say, oh, well, he has the narrowest waist around, therefore he's a top 3 guy. I just don't agree. I think that once you have a certain level of narrowness to the waist relative to the sweep of the lats, the sweep of the quads, I think there is a point at which it's enough, right? Yeah, you can still call it an advantage, but I think at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, you don't need to have a 15-inch waist in order to be a top-level classic competitor. Once it gets narrow enough, good. Like we can all say it as a compliment and then move on and take a look at the rest of the physique. So I'm glad that they didn't go that way. But to jump from what I believe was 11th to 5th, really, really good on his part. Like, honestly, fantastic. Like, I have no complaints with what he brought. Could there have been a slight bit more detail? Yes. But at that point, we are very, very, we're being very cherry picky, because what the people were comparing him to, some of the conditioning that was brought was just out of this world, right? Especially the battle for 4th and 5th, because obviously they brought him out alongside of our next competitor that we're going to talk about, which is Josema. Nobody knows how to pronounce it, or at least I don't. Jose Manuel, the Beast. And obviously there, it's like he's arguably the most conditioned athlete in classic as is. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, only if he brought the conditioning of Jose. Why? Like, that's just, at that point, you're just like, okay, so if only he brought the conditioning that the best in classic physique had, at that, it's like, okay, well, you could say that about a lot of people. Overall, fantastic showing, looked amazing, and I am really, really looking forward to next year's Olympia. Our next athlete, Jose, the one we were just talking about, Jose. Wow, that is bad lighting for his physique. You see, this is the thing, like, you're taking a look at a guy who is arguably the most conditioned athlete in classic physique, and somehow this lighting is making him look like he's in decent condition. Obviously, if you take a look at these shots next to each other, this is where you really start to see, okay, there are levels to this game in terms of conditioning. He just has a lot more detail than the athlete next to him, who is still in very good condition, right? Let's not get this wrong. He's still, One Punch Nas, still in good condition. And this is what I mean by them not making it such a value on the waist that they ignore every other variable. Because he's bigger, he's leaner, he has more muscle in certain areas, but he has at least a somewhat narrow waist to give some level of flow. Is it perfect? Of course not. There is at least an ability for there to be a little bit of sweep both ways, and they didn't just say, okay, Niall has a smaller waist, let's give it to him, which I was very, very happy with. I did not want to see the Olympia make a decision like that. Let us move on to, that's crazy that I talk about him for so little time. I think part of the reason why I feel very little need to talk about Jose for a long time is because his ceiling is lower than other competitors, in my opinion, because he's basically maxed out his stats at this point. He's huge, he's shredded, but he can't change the structural issues with his physique, right? So somebody like Niall can get bigger, can get leaner, can add mass to certain areas to accentuate what the frame that he already has. So I don't find myself super excited about Jose's future in classic, just because of the fact that I think he's pretty much gotten as good as he's going to get for this category. Maybe they do a waist reduction surgery or something that changes things, but other than that, I don't see there being a lot of upside to his physique. Watch this. This is going to be like TNF 2025 said this, and then in 2026 he takes home the W for classic physique. Maybe he does, but I would love to see a guy like that move up to open. I think this would be a good time to do it. Put on a lot more size, go into open and see what you can do. All right, now obviously you guys know Ruff is my boy. Ruff is my boy. He lives in Texas. I've had a chance to speak to him on multiple occasions, get a workout in with him. Love the guy to death. Let us talk about the issues that keep him from being 1 or 2 right now. Size. That is, I shouldn't say that's it, right? Size. And then I will say this. The level of conditioning that is being asked from these athletes at this point is so high that I do think that Ruff has an extra gear that he's not hit yet for conditioning, which is crazy to say because obviously, like, this is great conditioning, right? He looks incredible. So for me to say that, it means that the level is just so high that maybe he could, maybe he could bring something extra. But the nice thing about Ruff, and the thing that people don't think about or realize, is Ruff does have he has a larger upside. I know it sounds crazy because it's like, well, he made so many improvements between last Olympia that he did and this one. That's the thing. Ruff still has more to his weight cap. I was talking with him, and what he said to me was, I said, oh, what was your weigh-in? And I think he weighed I think it was 2 pounds under what he needed to weigh. So people think, oh, okay, so he only has 2 pounds to go. That's not true. That's not true, because when I was talking to him, he also said he didn't do any cutting in order to make weight, right? It wasn't like he was not drinking water or not eating. He said he was eating all the way up to weigh-ins, right? So it's like, this guy hasn't even done a cut in order to make the weight class, right? He cut in order to have a good physique, but not to make the weight class like a lot of other people do. So that means there's 2 factors here that we have to pay attention to for the future. Ruff, not only does he have the ability to put on more muscle and then just maybe dehydrate a little bit or keep food out of his system, not even necessarily food. I mean, this is getting into too much detail, but just have a little bit less water in him so that he's a little bit more dried up going into his weigh-ins, and then he can fill out after and obviously go above that weight cap. Not just that, but I do think there is just a little bit more detail that we can get through the hamstrings. The glutes are pretty good, but I still think there's just a little bit more to come off of this physique. Especially when you take a look at some of the other guys who bring crazy conditioning. The quads, I think there's still a little bit more that can come off. And I know you're going to say, oh, that's crazy. How dare. If other people come in more conditioned than you, then that means that you can get a little bit more conditioned yourself. I know some people will say, not everybody can get. I think that Ruff can. I legitimately do. I think that he could take off an additional 3-ish pounds of fat and still have the look that he needs. Maybe even more. Right? I think that there is a 3 to 5 pound amount of fat that can come off, which then obviously increases the amount of muscle that he can put on to fill out the weight cap more. And then possibly dehydration methods in order to make weight, which means that we are looking at a guy. I know this is going to sound crazy. We are looking at a guy who can legitimately put on 10 more pounds of tissue. He has 10 more pounds of tissue to go. Which, if you understand what that is for a person who is this height, that is crazy. He could put on 10 more pounds of tissue and still make weight, which people I do not think are considering. I think they are like, oh, well, yeah, this is what he looks like. And no, he has a lot more to go. So I am very excited for Terrence because he has so much upside. He's already shown how much he's improved in a couple years. In 1, 2, 3 more years, I think he could be
Terrifying.
I think he could be terrifying for the category. So he already looks amazing. Obviously, well done by him. But the main reason why he didn't necessarily place in the top 2 is because of the fact that he's got outsized a little bit. And I would say he also got slightly outconditioned too. Mike Sommerfeld. Let's see if he has any pictures on his own profile. Okay, he does. He has some pictures on his own. First thing to note, all right? Because I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, what happened? What happened? He looked great, right? He brought a very, very good look, especially considering the circumstances. And this is where I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox. And you guys are probably going to be mad about it, but I can handle the heat, I hope. We'll see. The thing you have to understand when you have been, and you watched his coach talk about it, and like obviously it's like the coach was showing his fear about everything, which justified in hindsight. When you are preparing for an entire season to be a certain weight, and at the last second you have to drop more poundage, there's going to be things that does to your overall look. Now, I'm not saying that, like, and this is where people will be like, what are you talking about? He looks great. Yes, he does. But could you imagine, right? Let's just bear with me for a second. Imagine similar level of conditioning with an additional like 4-ish pounds of overall enhancement to the look. 4 or 5 more pounds of enhancement to the look, right? I saw some side-by-sides of him from last year versus this year, and you could see the quads were like a little bit smaller. Now, obviously that could be partially glycogen, but it's very, very hard to make weight for something like this at 204, which is what he had to do, and then fill out to the same level as you would have if you had to make 212 and then fill out. So it's not necessarily that he lost a crap ton of tissue or anything, but your ability to actually fill out the overall frame is going to be less. So for a guy like Mike, who was expecting to have to make 212, this is going to impact his overall look on stage. I still think he looks amazing. This might even be a better look than he had last year overall, but I think he was going to bring a better look than he did last year overall anyways, especially based on the updates that we saw leading into show. The only question mark is, okay, if he had been 212, could he have brought a similar level of conditioning with even more size? And I think the answer is yes. All of that being said, because I know people are gonna take this wrong. Ramon 100% brought it this year. I would argue that this is the best that Ramon has ever looked. Now, I am a little bit biased towards conditioning. I've always been that way because it is the one thing that is in every athlete's control. You might say, well, I liked previous years where he was a little bit more like bubbly and stuff like that. I think Ramon's overall look that he brought this year was the best that I have seen. It was kind of funny because I was seeing some comparisons of his physique from previous years to this year, and one of the things, like, just look at that, okay? When I take a look at this physique, I'm like, oh, like that makes me legitimately just, I have to pick my jaw up off the floor. One of my clients from Brazil,
morei no sul do Brasil a maior parte da minha vida e tenho planos de me mudar.
Sent me this update before the Olympia started, and I literally just texted back to him the emoji like with the open face, because I was like, oh, this is not. I don't think we have seen Ramon look like this before. I legitimately don't. I don't think we've seen this level of detail. Look at this quad. Look at that. That is just insane.
Oh no.
There is lines that you wouldn't even know existed going on through these quads. It is absolutely insane. And then you take a look at his face, and the face, it's like that, have you ever seen the movie Ants? And his jaw is just like a complete square. Like, it looks like that. Austin, you better do some editing with that because it looks exactly like that. And I just don't think we've seen this from Ramon before. So I think he looks phenomenal. I think this is just insane, ridiculous, crazy good conditioning. I don't think we've seen this level from Ramon before. And I had a lot of people asking me, they said, oh, well, what about Ramon this year versus C-Bum last year? And I haven't gone through all the comparisons yet. Maybe I will in the future. I might even make that into a video for you guys. Let me know. Let me know if you want to see that. Ramon from this year versus C-Bum from last year. I think this is the best Ramon I have ever seen. And that is, man, he looks good. I think he did amazing. It was very, very cool to see, especially because like all the lore behind it, where it's like, oh, he's the next Kevin Levrone. He'll never take the title. And honestly, I didn't think he would either up until literally the last week before the Olympia, because obviously once they started saying Mike was going to have to compete in 204, I shouldn't say they, me, kind of sorry for pushing that topic, but I really, really wanted to see a fair competition. And I wanted it to be, okay, you have to be the weight of the height that you're at. So, I mean, there was definitely I definitely am glad that the Olympia did what they did. There's been a couple integrity moves that they've made during this Olympia, I think, that I was very happy to see, and that was one of them, was making sure that people were the height that they needed to be for their category, which is obviously going to mean a lot moving forward, right? It means that Mike's going to have to make 204 from now on, and that's going to limit his overall potential in this category. I mean, an additional 8 pounds is a lot. I don't think people who have not been in bodybuilding understand how much difference 8 pounds can make to a physique in terms of overall look, especially when that physique is not super tall. I mean, we're getting off topic. Ramon looked incredible, and I am very, very happy for him for this win. It was super, super cool to see. I want to put out there right now, look at this top 5. Like, look at that. I think every single one of these guys, when the category was started, every single one of these guys would have won the category when it first started. Even maybe a few years into it, right? Even like Sebum's first win ever. I think I think maybe maybe all 5. I don't necessarily want to say that. I'd need to do the comparisons. But I think all of these guys would have given Sebum a run for his money in the first couple years of him competing. Obviously, he got better as time went on. But I legitimately think that a lot of these guys could have won the Classic Physique Olympia, like, what would that have been? 2020? I can't remember when the years were. All of these guys looked incredible, right? This as your top 5 is insane. Look at Jose right there. That being a 4th place physique is crazy. Now, some people say, oh, well, he should have been in the top 3. The fact that we're arguing this is crazy because Terrence, 3, obviously looked amazing. Mike, 2, obviously looked amazing. Ramon, number 1, obviously, like, this is such a competitive category right now, and it's only getting more competitive. It is every single year has gotten more competitive. Nas, that physique being 5th, that's insane. That is insanity. Guys, this was like, I know, like, we can talk about 212, we can talk about the Mr. O. Obviously, that stuff is exciting, but the difference between those categories and this category is those categories have peaked in other years. I shouldn't say peaked. I think 212 was honestly really, really interesting this year too. I would say that the Open Olympia, like, it's obviously, it's had better times overall, right? You've had times with Ronnie Coleman, Phil Heath, Jay Cutler, Dorian, where you can make good arguments for it being like a little bit more interesting on those points. Classic Physique, I think, is more interesting now than it's ever been. And I know that some of you say, no, it's not because Sebum's gone. But the overall level is the best now that it's ever been. At least in the last couple years, it's the best now that it's ever been. And I think that makes the sport much, much more interesting. But Classic Physique has only gotten better. I am so excited for future years because the number of athletes that have the ability to make their way into the top 5 now, the people who are in the top 5 who could be rearranged in future years. What a time, guys. What a time. The next Olympia Classic Physique, in my opinion, will be one of the most interesting things to happen in bodybuilding in the last 20 years. This is super, super fun. Ramon, congratulations. Honestly, congratulations to all the guys in the top 5, but a special congratulations to Ramon. Took 2nd for so long. Oh, no! I lost you guys. Oh, well, we are finishing the video anyways. I hope you can hear me. But as always, love you guys. Appreciate you guys. It wouldn't be a TNF video without technical difficulties. TNF out.